Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Carmel Granahan, and I'll be your host for today's webinar on 3 secrets to mastering difficult conversations to boost customer retention. I've already been chatting to 1 or 2 people in the chat already, so I'd like to say welcome back to those of you that have joined my webinars before. And if you're new to, if this is your first webinar, then welcome and thank you so much for joining. My name is Carmel Granahan and I'm the founder of Unify Success. I have over 10 years experience in customer success, namely in B2B SaaS companies. Prior to that, I've done lots of customer facing roles, so customer support, customer service, sales support, so everything customer facing really, and that's something I really enjoy. So with Unified Success, I founded it I help customer success managers of customer success teams, CEOs and small businesses, customer support champions. I help them solve pain points in their customer journey or in their customer process, so they can retain their customers better, faster and smarter. So I in essence, fast track you to getting where you need to be. So if you're ready for us to get going, just type yes in the chat and we'll get going straight away. And anyone that's late joining can always pick up the recording. So as a customer, the reason I decided on today's topic, so I've been doing lots of topics and they're primarily all customer journey related. But I think when you're handling support or you're handling conflict or difficult conversations, they can affect any sort of customer facing role really. Now today's session is particularly focused on the SaaS industry, but there's some tips there that you would get even if you weren't in the SaaS industry. So over 50% said that it frustrates them when conflict arises and that they'd love to handle it better. So that's why I decided on today's session. So my goal for this webinar is to help you take back control of those difficult conversations and to boost your customer retention. So don't let those terrible conversations be a reason that your customer churns, basically. And I used to often find that in my previous role, that when you go back, if a customer churned and you went back and you looked at the previous conversations, you'd often think, oh, I could have handled that better, or okay, we didn't follow up with them when we said we would, or whatever it might be. If you take control of the situation, then those shoulda, wouldas are not as frequent. So before we just dive in, I'd just like to ask you, what's the biggest challenge you encounter when handling difficult conversations? So what's the biggest challenge you encounter? So like, why do you kind of shy away from these conversations, or what would you hope to achieve after today's session? Anyone? No? Everyone's staying a little bit quiet. That's okay. And Nancy mentioned better strategies for handling them in the moment when unexpected. Yes. That's a really good point, Nancy, because I used to always say to my team as well that it's very easy to be nice to nice customers, but it's very different when you are, faced with a customer that may not be so nice, and it's how you navigate those conversations is what matters. And thankfully, I think in most companies you have a lot more happy customers than unhappy customers. But yes, you do need to be able to kind of just jump straight into action and solve those issues once they occur. So if you've been struggling so far, this is probably why. You don't know your customer as well as you think you do, and you haven't learned how to handle difficult or uncomfortable customer conversations yet. So, you haven't kind of been, I suppose, giving the training or the resources or the frameworks or the tools to equip you to handle them much better, so that you do get more comfortable with them. And if you're not equipped, then it leads to poor customer relationships and dread when you see that customer name pop up. So I think that's something we all want to avoid, but it's definitely happened to me where, you see the customer's name pop up and you're like, oh, what do they want this time? Or, oh, what did we do wrong this time? That type of thing. So you want to avoid that. And it leads to lack of trust, which if you don't have trust, then it leads to inevitable customer churn as a result. So it's all kind of a series of events that can happen. An interesting statistic I found online actually was that 60% of customers now have higher expectations of customer service than before the pandemic. So people are going back to that customer focus, and that's what they expect. And that can be a differentiator as well. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to dive into 3 different areas. The first is, I'm just kind of easing you in. So it's how you can improve customer relationships by walking in your customer's shoes. Why you should not shy away from having difficult conversations. And of course, what to do instead. And number 3 is, you'll be shocked when I show you how you can triple your engagement by handling these types of objections better. So who's ready to dive into all these secrets? Type yes in the chat window and we'll get going straight away. Great. Yes. Okay, great. Super. We got loads of yeses there. So that's exactly what we want. So how you can improve customer relationships by walking in your customer's shoes. So when I kind of stood back, I'm always saying you need to put yourself in your customer's position, and I'm always talking about walking in your customer's shoes. But when I thought about it, there's 2 questions you need to ask yourself if you are really going to put yourself in your customer's shoes. And the first one is, what does a day in the life of one of my, I suppose, loyal customers look like? So I understand in SaaS you might attract people from lots of different industries, might necessarily be in your top 10, but do you know what a day in the life of your customer looks like? Just type yes or no in the chat window. It's not an easy one because there's so many different variables there. Not always, yeah. That's very honest. It depends, and that's a very good answer that we got there. Not most of the time, okay. So ideally, you would be looking at most of the time. Yes, you do know kind of what goes on. So what does the company do? What does your customer do? What does their role entail? What does success look like to them? How can you make their life easier using your software? That type of thing. So I mentioned main contacts would manage many applications, so it's hard to get a real image. They're in charge more than just our application. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it is. It's different. And the second question, which is, again, it's probably an easy one to answer, but would you like to be a client of yours? So would I like to be a client of mine? So would you write yes or no? And so this is based on kind of how you manage your interactions with customers. Great. Nancy, definitely yes. Anyone else? Priya, yes. Okay, great. That's good. Well, then you're halfway there if you can answer that one. So we're going to dive into now the reasons why it's critical to walk in your customer's shoes. And the one thing it comes down to is empathy. So if you understand your customer's feelings, it leads to greater empathy for their needs. And this enhanced empathy enables a better response to customer requests. So if you have that empathy genuinely for your customers' feelings, then you will automatically generate better responses. So you'll do the follow-ups. You'll make sure you get the issue resolved for them. You'll follow up when you say you will. You'll do a lot more than you would have if you didn't have empathy for their needs. So that's something that you really need to think about. So a few people have said that sometimes you know what your customers go through, sometimes you don't. So to really walk in your customer's shoes, you need to definitely ask some questions. And this is really important at the discovery stage. You can find out so much information. Your customer relationship management platform or your Customer success platform is what comes into play here, where you can document, obviously, those questions that you've asked. You need to listen to understand and not to reply. So I think we're all guilty of this, especially in our personal lives. If you're dying to tell somebody something, they're in the middle of telling you something and you have something that relates or maybe is better than their story, you're dying to do it. So even practice this with your friends and family. Manage customer expectations accordingly. So, make sure that you don't give wrong, like I suppose, break promises. I know in my early days as a customer success manager, I had just started and there was a few people that were looking for a specific feature. And so I started in the company in August 2013, I think it was, so over 10 years ago. And a few people had asked for a certain feature, and I had went and asked our engineering team, and they said, oh, we'll have that by the end of the year. And so I didn't ask any more questions. I just went back to the customer. I'm like, sure, we're going to have that out by the end of the year. And can you see where this is going? The end of the year came and went. The end of the next year came and went. The end of the next year came and went. And this feature was not released. And the reason it wasn't released is because it affected every single area of our application. So I didn't handle the situation very well because I didn't actually go back to those first customers that had asked, and I had said end of 2013. I didn't actually go back and say to them, oh, by the way, I'm really sorry, this feature, if I explained the why, I didn't do that, which I should have. But in this case, I definitely didn't manage the customer expectations correctly. Obviously, I learned a lot from that. And from there on in, I never, ever, even if the engineering team said, oh, yeah, it'll be out by the end of next week, and I knew that it was nearly done, I would still, be very cautious with what deadline I would give them. Keep them in the loop. So this is something that I would definitely be a big advocate for. So keep them in the loop even when you don't have an update. So your update is that you don't have an update, basically. So make sure that, you follow up when you say you will. Accept accountability. So you are, whether you're in support, success, customer service, you are working on behalf of the company. You're that middle man or that middle lady between you and your customers. So you do need to be the person that accepts the accountability, takes ownership, and makes sure to resolve the situation. And you do want to be that calm, reassuring voice. So you do want to deliver that peace of mind to your customers. And when you do that, you grow, your customer confidence, and you build trust. And that's what it comes down to. You need to build the relationships, build the trust, and then you have your long, loyal customers. So I hope that gave you some food for thought there on how you can walk in your customer's shoes and how you can kind of start that customer, I suppose, journey with them. Brilliant. Nancy actually mentioned there, it's better to under promise and over deliver. Wholeheartedly, yes, it definitely is. That was a mistake I made once and not again. Great. So secret number 2. So this is kind of where this is the meaty part. So why you should not shy away from having difficult conversations and what you can do instead. So firstly, I just want to ask you the question, why do your customers usually get angry, annoyed, frustrated, or worse, disappointed, which is the worst one? So why in your company do customers get agitated in any way? Does anyone have any customers that kind of get rubbed up the wrong way? So they aren't being responded to quickly enough. Yep. Not keeping them in the loop. Yep. They're 2 very good ones. Misaligned expectations. Yes. And sometimes I have seen other customer success managers. I often would have heard based on the conversation that what the customer thought and what the customer success manager was telling them, but sometimes people hear what they want to hear as well. So yeah, you do need to make sure that you're on the right page or on the same page. So setting wrong expectations got more churn due to it. Yeah, 100%. The expectations, because I think people feel let down when you don't meet their expectations. So I put together some more reasons why customers might get angry or frustrated or cause that conflict. So the first one is the application doesn't meet their needs or meet their expectations. So there might be bugs in the system. Your system doesn't do what they want it to do, or maybe sales said, oh yeah, of course you can do X, Y, or Z, and it turns out actually you can't, you can only do X. Your system's cumbersome, security or privacy. So this was something that would often pop up in my previous role as well, is that people would be, especially when the GDPR regulation came in Europe, people really turned to us to try and, I suppose, direct them on what they should do, which was actually outside of our remit. But you need to be confident in addressing, I suppose, or telling them what security standards you had in place. You need to be able to explain things in plain terms, like in plain English. If you don't know where their data is stored, there's some basic stuff that you really do need to know about your application. Pricing is a really big one. People get so annoyed. So I found security and pricing were the two biggest ones, but sometimes people didn't know they were still subscribed to your software. When they did realize, they then didn't get the refund they wanted, which also annoyed them. There was lack of communication. If there was a change or an increase in price, their discount expired. Lack of communication, so didn't get a response, as someone mentioned there in the chat. Didn't get a call back when requested or scheduled. Lack of guidelines, responses are inadequate. And then there was other things that were outside of your control, like they were experiencing issues in their personal lives, under a lot of pressure from their boss or team, and they're just having a bad day. So I distinctively remember a customer one day, she got really annoyed, and I was the head of customer success. So she'd been in touch with the customer success manager first, and then she asked to speak to a manager. So I, called her back, and she was so annoyed. She was actually upset. She actually cried. But I realized actually halfway through the conversation, she wasn't necessarily crying because we changed something in our application. She was crying because she was having a really stressful day. It was her kid's birthday party. Things weren't organized. All of that. So on the Monday, when I obviously didn't want to make the situation worse, but I acknowledged everything that she was feeling. And then on the Monday, as I mentioned on the Friday, that I would give her an update on the Monday. And on the Monday, she was a completely different person. So sometimes you have to think of there's things that go on outside of your control, but you have to, I suppose, work on what you can control. And that's what's really, really important. So if we think about it, what holds you back when conflict arises? I think I kind of asked that already. And it's fear. It's fear of negative repercussions. So worrying about upsetting the customer, making them angry, worrying maybe about what they might say. Negative situations can be very draining on your mental health as well, and it can make us all feel really uncomfortable. So sometimes it's your natural instinct is to avoid them. Lack of training or inadequate resources. So you haven't been properly trained on how to respond when a customer says something. There is definitely areas that in every company, especially if you're customer facing, that you should have, if this situation happens, then this, if this, then that, that type of thing. And I remember in my college, I didn't study law, but law was a subject that we had to do as part of our business and marketing degree. And one thing I always noticed was in law, they always went back over time to previous previous cases. And so you'd see Murphy versus Ford, 1932, and this was the outcome of the case. And sometimes that helps dictate what the outcome of a case in, let's say, 2008 would be based on this case from 1932. It just baffled me. But I find when in training, you need to start somewhere, and then it's a work in progress. So we used to do training, like I think it was every quarter, for like complex case training. So we'd meet, we'd discuss what issues there were that month or that quarter, and then the outcomes. How did we do? Maybe what could we have done better, and then our learning outcomes. So it is really important to take control of that training internally. Lack of autonomy, so you're restricted, as you'd have to adhere to company policies. So this is something that sometimes you need a few cases kind of raise with the management team. Feeling unsupported by management or colleagues. I used to often find that sometimes when you tell a colleague about it, it would be made worse and not better. So it's just, you need that support network around you. In order to, I suppose, release some of that fear. And here's why you shouldn't shy away from having those difficult conversations. So no matter how hard it is, you shouldn't prolong an already difficult situation, because it definitely makes things worse. Makes for a poor customer experience. So don't put it off. And I've seen that so many times where a customer service person would kind of just want to get them off the phone. And that was kind of maybe their short-term goal, but they never actually wanted to solve the customer's problem, really. They just wanted the situation to nearly go away. The customer does get more angry and frustrated when there isn't any resolutions being offered. Again, it definitely strains customer relationships. You can often push customers over the edge and they cancel. So I don't know if you know that expression. It could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. The customer loses confidence and trust. Sorry, I keep thinking there's an extra slide there. So the customer loses confidence, and then the trust is broken. And it's very hard, once the trust is broken, to regain it back. I remember, again, it's probably from my earlier days as a customer success manager, but I cried, and I would be quite resilient as a person, but this customer called through, and we had changed something in our application. I think we had only given like a day or 2 days notice, and very little notice, and the feature, not many people used it. So that was one of the reasons it was kind of being reformed. People didn't lose data, but it was just different to how it worked before. But this customer rang in, and he was so annoyed. He was so frustrated. And I really took all of this on my shoulders. It was like 5 p.m. I was already done with the day. And then you get this call, and suddenly it's like, I don't know, you just felt the weight of the world on your shoulders. And after the call finished, I sat at my desk and I cried. And you know what? I actually felt so much better for it. But then I ended up, I suppose, talking to our product team and, seeing the reasons why. And I think that day especially, I didn't actually get back on the phone. Instead, I emailed them to say that I would be in touch in the morning, first thing in the morning, with an update. And I did. I called them the next day, and I had kind of done all my P's and Q's in order. And I was able to explain why, things did not work how they used to work, and all of that. So it gets the better of all of us. And I think that I fall into that category. I was just having a bad day. It wasn't necessarily the customer, but he was also really, really angry. So then that kind of, I took all that energy and pressure, I guess, on me as well. So it is very normal, but it's how you deal with it that counts. And that time just really stands out in my mind all of the time. I'm sure others have had difficult situations too, but it's how you handle them that matters, not, I suppose, the situation itself. Excuse me. So how to handle difficult conversations better. So the first step is obviously acknowledgement. So acknowledge the situation, how they're feeling, what the circumstances are. Listen to them. So listen once you acknowledge, so I think it's really important, let's say on a call, to ring and say, hi, this is Carmel from Unify Success. I want to follow up. I know you popped us an email about, let's say, the support bug is still outstanding. How's everything going for you? And then listen to what they say. And then you'd empathize, just say, I'm really sorry that I don't have an update for you right now. I'm speaking with, let's say, our support team, our product team, our engineering team, whatever it might be, but you're taking ownership. So, that you want them to know that you are in control of the situation, so that now this bug is on your radar. You have to make that customer feel like they are the only customer. Discuss the solution. So, like I sometimes used to speak to our engineering team and then kind of, I suppose, summarize that conversation into very plain English, because sometimes you might get a little bit more, it'd be a bit more technical, or they're using internal terms or the stuff that you wouldn't necessarily want to pass on to the customer. But discuss the solutions and then go back to the customer and, give the very shortened, summarized version and detail what the outcome is or what the expected outcome will be. And as I said there, and then follow up. So follow up internally and follow up externally with your customer. So does anyone do this already? It seems quite straightforward. There's only 6 steps and it is straightforward, but it's just sometimes when we're stuck in reactive mode and in the thick of it, you don't think to do all of these things. So it is important to be able to follow a particular process, and it will help you work towards that customer satisfaction and improve the overall experience for them as well. One statistic I always refer back to, and it's that it costs from 5 to 25 times more to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. So I think that kind of just even highlights the importance of how you manage and deal with your customers, why it's so important, because of how, the cost implication is so high. Remember that we want to keep our customers happy so that they stay happy, loyal customers. So that's really, really important. And so now we'll dive into our last section, and it's about how you can triple your engagement by handling these 2 types of objections better. So what are the 2 most common objections you typically get when dealing with customers? So somebody's a customer, lack or slow response on updates from support tickets and project deadlines being delayed. Yes, yeah, they're very, very common for sure. But what are the 2 most common objections you get now? So if someone says that they want to cancel or they're thinking about canceling, what are the reasons they give you? Product is too tough to manage. Okay. That's a tricky one. I don't know, is that down to implementation or training? Is the product just too, is there just too much going on with the product? Is it that their people won't adopt it? Yeah, there's a lot there actually. It's a tough one as well. Price increase, yeah, definitely. Costly, missing features. Delays in handling bug fixes and lack of transparency in deadlines. Sometimes delayed responses from support. Yeah, these are all very, very common. And I guess it's, if you're losing customers because of them, then you definitely need to address them. Somebody mentioned one of them there. So the 2 I'm going to discuss with you is price, and the second one is competitors. Excuse me. So here are some tips for handling pricing objections better. So do your research, compare your price or product offering with competitors, because people have different values on money and how they spend their money and where they spend their money, and how they spend company money, and if there's budget cuts. So you do need to be aware of how much your competitors are offering their product for. So to be able to position yours against them. So in my previous role, we sold a very low cost product and people would still say the price was too high. So, it's about kind of benchmarking it against your competitors and what they offer and what you offer. I'd always recommend not to negotiate over email. So pick up the phone, and people are, I suppose, we're in that generation or that era where it's keyboard warriors are very common, very popular. And it's so easy to type something, but to actually say it to somebody, whether it's over the phone or face to face, is very, very different. So try not negotiate it over email. And when you're negotiating, don't use we, use I instead, because that makes the interaction more personal and people, talk to people. So you're saying like, I will try my best, or I'll see what I can do, or, I'm afraid it's not possible. That's already the lowest price. We in order for us to be sustainable as a company, we couldn't offer a lower price than that. Be able to justify your price increase. So something you could say, especially since in the last 12 months, we worked hard on X, Y, and Z, or we've recruited maybe 3 new engineers and a new, customer success manager, whatever the case might be, but just make sure that you're able to justify why your price has increased. And don't be afraid of awkward silences. A report from Gong suggests that top sellers pause for 2.1 seconds after starting their price. So I think that shows you're confident in your price as well. And that pause can be so meaningful. And don't give false hope. So something I've come across is that, you would say, oh, I'll speak with my manager and we'll see what we can do for you. Sometimes people can take that up as, oh, okay, I'm getting a discount. And then you go back and say there's no discount. And then suddenly they're even more disappointed than they would have been if you had openly said no to them. So it is important not to give false hope. And the last one I would say is to try and have some sort of bargaining power. So like try and say, so if they want 20% discount, what's the most discount you can give? What criteria do they need to meet in order to give them this little discount? Because sometimes people just want something. Or for example, you could offer extra training. So I know, Nancy, I think you mentioned there about products is too tough to manage. So that's a very kind of open, it depends on the person. There's lots of variables there with the product being too hard to manage, but extra training could go a long way as well. And I found in the past that sometimes you'd offer extra training and then they would never take you up on it. That, it was just nearly easier to say that we're not using your product. And then when you offer, help to resolve that issue, they didn't take you up on it anyway. So you have to be able to, I suppose, read between the lines as well. When it comes to competitors, there is tips as well that you can use for handling competitors better. Perfect. Yeah. So Nancy actually just mentioned, that is what happens. They offer training and the customer don't take them up on it. Do you know what I think it is though, with the training one especially? I think you nearly need to maybe record or just ask them maybe like what specifically is the problem. Try and get to the root cause of the problem. And then maybe record like a video, like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, if you can, ultra fast on how you can solve that problem using your software. So you don't have to go into like the whole ins and outs of everything, but just kind of base it on kind of the outcome, and then see can that kind of re-engage them to get the conversation restarted about training. Some tips for handling competitor objections better. So the market I worked in previously, it was a very crowded marketplace. It was a CRM world. So you have to be on your A game. You have to know who your competitors were. You had to know what they offered that people really liked, maybe what they offered that people didn't really like. So you had to do your research. One thing I used to always do, which was really, really good, and it probably made my job easier, was that I would just go on to Captera or G2 Crowd and I'd read the reviews on the competitors. And then that way, if I read at least 10 reviews, and if 5 of them were all kind of saying that the reporting was bad, but I knew that pretty much the reporting was bad. So that's just a really quick and easy way to kind of find out what your competitors' customers think about their product. Know the main strengths. Again, focus on value over features. So, like, it's an easy one for it to get caught like a deer in headlights as well. If someone says, "Oh, I'm switching to a competitor," or they'll name the competitor, and because they have everything, so you need to kind of dig down. So, what do you like about their product? Have you checked them out? Have you signed up for a trial? What's the name of the product? And sometimes you Google the product and it'd be like, okay, that's 100% focused on real estate. They're also charging you 20 times more than what we were charging you. So it's like you need to kind of dig deeper to find out why they're looking at alternatives. Ask questions. Customize your response to address their direct concerns. So don't just give very general, "Oh yes, I know they're very good at marketing," or something like that. Really hone in on what they prefer and how you can do that in using your software. Or if you can't do it, then the workaround. Sometimes I've held my hand up and I said, "No, you're not able to do that. Can I ask why it's important to you?" And you just kind of get the background to it. And you always need to be clear on what sets you apart from your competitors. It could be features, integrations, your support, your aftercare. So again, if you read the testimonials, you'll find all that out. Showcase your track record of success. So like share a case study, for example. So, here's how Rick is using our CRM, for example, to manage his real estate. And so then maybe that person is not using your software the way they should be. And so that's why they're not seeing as many results. And finally, just a few tips on providing proactive customer success. So if you do better discovery, and it's never too late either. So like if you don't, I suppose, ask all the questions in the very beginning, it's still every time you talk to a customer, you can still be discovering more and more about them. Be that trusted advisor. So kind of put yourself in their shoes, think about the situation for them. Don't just say, don't just be a customer support champion. Be that trusted consultative approach to advising them. Spend time with the right customers, because I think sometimes you can spend way too much time with the wrong customers. So that 80-20 rule. And build relationships. Have real conversations. So I remember there was lots of customers, and in some cases I think I knew too much about our customers. One particular customer, I remember, he wanted to send me knives. He sold this range of like kitchen knives, and he wanted to send me some. And I just thought, I'm not going to accept this one, because if I do, it's like I will owe him something. But it just shows you we had got to that point where he did want to send me a gift instead of us sending him a gift. But have real conversations. So yeah, that sums up today's session. Before we do a recap, I'm just going to have a sip of water. So as usual, it was pretty jam-packed. There's lots and lots of variables as well when you're dealing with difficult customers, like different personalities, different situations, your mindset. There's so much that you need to take into consideration. But every time that you, I suppose, have a difficult conversation, it's important that you learn from it. And if you even write down your learnings, what you could have done better, what went well, and what you could have done better, I think that will definitely help you over time. How you can improve customer relationships. Yeah, so ask yourself the 2 questions. If you understand your feelings, your customer's feelings, it leads to greater empathy. So remember that. So remember, you really do need to listen hard and understand your customer's feelings. And I shared some tips on how to walk in your customer's shoes. Then, why you should not shy away from having the difficult conversations, we looked at the possible reasons why customers get angry. And I think that's really important, is to look at the reasons why. We also focused a little bit on fear, even though there's lots more you can take from that there. But fear definitely holds us back from taking action. So it's important to, I suppose, feel the fear and do it anyway. And then we worked on kind of the 6-step framework and how to handle difficult conversations better. And then we talked about how to handle 2 types of objections better. So pricing and competitor objections. They're 2 very, very common ones. We also got some input there from Nancy, and she mentioned, about it's tough getting people on board. Or sorry, it's tough getting people that are, getting tongue-tied. Getting people often say that your product is too tough to adopt or that type of thing. So it's just kind of handling that objection better, and kind of that sometimes can be a lot of trial and error on what works and what doesn't work. But having kind of a process in place for what to do when that situation arises is really, really important. So I just want to let you all know that I'm here to help. I help customer support champions, customer success managers, leaders, CEOs who want to take action. So you want to solve pain points in your customer journey. Then I'm here to help.